everyone, my name is Rachel. Welcome back to my channel. Today I just want to talk about books that I have read recently that I'm absolutely obsessed with. Most of these books I have given 5 stars, but a couple of them weren't quite 5-star reads, but I did have a really fun time with them and I gave them 4 stars, so I wanted to talk about them anyway. So I realized that I haven't done one of these videos since I think the end of July, so it's definitely been a while, like 3 months. That is crazy. So without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump on into this list. I'm gonna kind of go chronologically from when I read these books. So going from the beginning of August to now, I want to talk about Ship of Bones and Teeth by Karina Halle. This is a historical fantasy romance, and I have never read anything paranormal or fantastical by Karina Halle before, though I am a huge fan of her. Pretty much every book that I've read by her I've given 5 stars. She just really works for me, and I was just in the mood to read this one day, and I'm so glad that I did. It definitely is inspired by The Little Mermaid, but of course it goes into its own story, and it's everything. So we have Marin 10 years before the story begins. She is a siren and she makes a deal with the sea witch. I think her name is Adonia, if I'm not mistaken. So she is turned into a human and her voice is taken from her, though she eventually gets her voice back, and she marries Prince Eric. Turns out that Eric is an asshole. Content warning for domestic abuse, domestic violence. He is the worst. And so now it's 10 years after that deal. She is at the lowest of the low. I also want to say content warning for suicide ideation for sure. And she is on a ship with her husband and her husband's crew. She is now a princess because of course he's a prince. And their ship gets taken over by Captain Ramsey, who is known as Captain Bones, and it is actually their romance. And this is everything you could want from a pirate romance, from a historical romance, a fantasy romance, like all wrapped up into one, and I truly love all of those things. So this book I felt was truly written for me. Like I said, I loved the inspiration that this took from The Little Mermaid, but then of course Karina Halle did a phenomenal job of making this story her own. This is a very dark dark romance as well. I do want to point that out. And there are sirens involved in this story, but there's also other paranormal creatures, which I thought was really cool, but I'm not gonna say what kinds of creatures those are because that would be spoiling the book. But yeah, this was just fantastic, and I can't wait to read more paranormal and fantastical things from Karina Halle for sure. Next up, I want to talk about The Housemaid. This is something completely different from literally every other book I'm going to talk about on this list because it's the only non-romance book. So this book has gone so viral on Book Talk for sure, and I just wanted to see what the fuss was about. Did I say what the book was? It's The Housemaid by Frida McFadden. I don't even know if I said that. Here we are. And this is about our main character. Of course, I don't remember names, but she is kind of down on her luck. She was in prison for a few years and now she's out, and of course it's like nearly impossible to get a job once you've been in the system, and so she gets this job as a housemaid. Things are not what they seem, of course, with these types of thrillers. She has to sleep in this really creepy little room in the attic, whereas the rest of the house is big and spacious and nice because they're a very wealthy family. Her boss is nice at first but gets really cruel. I could sense the plot twist coming from like 10,000 miles away, but this book was truly so addictive. I haven't read a book in a while where I truly didn't want to put the book down. I just wanted to keep reading until the end. Like, I really feel like I could have read this book in one sitting, even though this is like a full-length novel. Something about Frida McFadden's writing is just so addictive. So even though it's not the best thriller I've ever read, it didn't have the best plot twist ever, maybe not the best writing ever, like I was just so invested in here for the drama and the tea. So the next 4 books I want to talk about, I featured heavily in my last reading vlog. I'll link it up in the cards above, but it's the one where the thumbnail said cozy reading vlog. And so I definitely went in depth about all 4 of these books and why I love them so much in that video. So if you want to know my full in-depth reviews of these books, definitely check out that video. So for now, I'm just going to kind of give you guys the bullet points of what is so amazing about these books. So first we have Escorted by Claire Kent. I am obsessed with Claire Kent. I feel like not nearly enough people have read her works. She is an indie romance author, probably best well known for her Kindled series. The first book in that series is called Haven. That is a post-apocalyptic romance series, where this is pretty much a standalone, that there is a novella that is a companion to this that I also read. But as you can kind of tell from the title, this is about our heroine, Lori. She is a romance author, but she is a virgin, and she definitely wants to get experience with things like sex and dating, you know, all that good stuff. So she hires an escort named Ander to help her out with that, and things go on from there. Now, I have read some sex worker escort romances before, but I feel like this completely subverted my expectations of what a sex worker romance is. I just found Ander's character to be so interesting. The relationship between the two of them, it feels very awkward at times, but that also makes it feel more real. And yeah, I just love this. This felt very unique and very realistic, very authentic. And I don't know that I've ever read a romance quite like this. So good. I will say I did read the companion novella, which is called Breaking, I think, which is like an extended epilogue of this book. I would not recommend reading that. I really didn't enjoy that. I just felt like that novella was a lot of miscommunication between these two characters, and they just wouldn't talk out their issues. Whereas this book was just so perfect that I do feel like that novella kind of hindered my view of this book, even though I know that at the time I loved my reading experience with this one. So maybe don't read that novella, just read this. You're good to go. But yeah, like I said, just such a unique romance for sure. Then I have Not Another Love Song by Julie Soto. Truly one of the best books I've read this year. Oh my God. Which I didn't expect, because I read Forget Me Not, which is the first book in this series, and I liked it. I didn't love it. I gave it 4 stars. This book is on another level. It is so romantic, almost feels magical in how romantic it is, and it also takes place in New York City during the holidays, so that's kind of what gives me the magical feeling that I had while reading this. This centers around 2 musicians, as you can see. We have Xander and Gwen, and so they end up playing in the same orchestra together, and that was one of the things that I loved so much about this book, is how centered it is on music and classical music. That is my background. I studied classical music, specifically operatic singing, in college, both my undergrad degree and graduate degrees, and you can just really feel that Julie Soto knows what she's talking about. She also has a passion for this kind of music, and that just really, you know, came through on the page, and I felt like there was so much tension and chemistry between these 2 main characters. There are some scenes in this that are like hot, but also this was so swoony and romantic. It was just everything I could have wanted from this premise. Oh my God. I want to reread it now that I'm talking about it. So good. And then we have Happy Place by Emily Henry. I am now an Emily Henry stan. This was amazing, and I now have to read everything that Emily Henry has ever written. This is both a story about friendship and a second chance romance between our 2 main characters, Harriet and Wynne. And I just thought it was so beautifully written, and I felt like this was a love letter to people that are in like their early 30s and beyond, specifically people who, you know, made really close friendships maybe in high school or college, and they're still trying to keep those friendships alive and healthy, and that is easier said than done. I totally related to that, because 2 of my best friends in the whole wide world, it's just not as convenient for us to get together anymore, even though I love them so much, and that is heartbreaking. And so yeah, this was just everything. I just saw a quote on here, our generation's answer to Nora Ephron, and I totally agree with that. That is so accurate. Oh my God. And then the last book that I talked about in that reading vlog, Wisteria. Oh my God, you guys. If you are not reading the Belladonna series, you are seriously missing out. And if you are someone, because I know there's a lot of people out there that read Belladonna, loved it, but then didn't enjoy Foxglove all that much, and so they gave up on the series, you need to pick this book up. Just trust my recommendation, maybe do a reread of the first 2 books, and then jump into this one because, oh my god, I think I loved this even more than Belladonna. Holy shit, this was amazing. Basically, Belladonna is, you know, the romance between Cigna and Death, but this book is the romance between Blythe and Aris, who is Fate. And Foxglove is just the book that bridges the 2 romances, and so I definitely understand why some people struggled with that book. I personally enjoyed it for what it was, especially that ending because of how it segued into their story in this 3rd book. But please pick this up if you gave up on the series. Like, oh my god, you guys don't know what you're missing. This was the epitome of a hate to love romance. The banter between Blythe and Aris was truly top tier, chef's kiss, amazing. And this also just had a very like whimsical feel to it that definitely wasn't present in the first 2 books, and I just thought that that was really cool. This book is also very heart-wrenching, I will say that. Oh my god, the last 30 pages like ripped my heart out, but by the very end my heart was whole again, and like, oh my god, this was just incredible. If you love new adult fantasy romance, if you love gothic romance, historical romance, any of those things, I promise you will enjoy this series and thank me later. Okay, thanks. All right, next up, we have, speaking of gothic romance, I want to talk about Dark Desires by Eve Silver. This is a book that I did not give 5 stars. However, it was very close to being a 5-star book. I gave it like 4.5 stars, and I am so excited about this series and about this author because I have been looking for more gothic historical romances for my TBR, and this was perfect. So this is book 1 of a series of 6 books. However, they're all standalones. None of the characters connect from what I understand, so you could read these books in any order that you want to. I just felt like starting with book 1. This one is about our main character who is down on her luck. She gets a job from our hero, Damien. He's a doctor. First as just like a housemaid for him, but once he realizes her abilities, specifically her artistic abilities, he employs her as his assistant. He is a doctor who basically explores the mysteries of life and death and all of that, and so he dissects bodies, and so he needs someone to draw diagrams of body parts and things like that. And so this just had like the perfect gothic vibes, down to there was a scene where she was in a white flowy nightgown and she just had a candle in her hand, and she was like wandering the house at night and creepy things were happening. Like, it was just everything. The romance was really sweet, really enjoyed it, and this had like just the right amount of like creepiness and eeriness. Like, so good. So I'm very excited to continue on with this series really soon. I'm hoping to pick up book 2 like within the next week or so. That one is going to be a romance involving a governess. Very excited for that. Next up, we have Bro and the Beast by Elsie Davis. Speaking of books that I didn't quite give 5 stars, however, I'm having so much fun with this series, you guys. Oh my god, this is so funny, so unique. It's everything. So we have our main character, Brad. He is like the epitome of a frat bro, okay? And his brother is like the epitome of a geek. And so they definitely have, you know, butted heads over the years. They usually don't get along, and he sees that his brother is reading this Omegaverse romance, this like wolf shifter Omegaverse romance, and so he starts making fun of him for it. His brother storms out of their house and he decides to read it, if for nothing else to make fun of it, but he actually gets really invested in the story. Then he gets into a car accident and he ends up not only in the world of this wolf shifter Omegaverse romance, he ends up becoming the main character. And so the hero, Raoul, our wolf shifter hero, falls for Brad. Meanwhile, Brad thought that he was straight. Raoul also thought that he was straight, and so things get very interesting and complicated. And I have read now, I think three novellas in this series. I want to say there's like 6 or 7 currently out. I don't know if more are going to be written. I'm not sure if the series is completed yet. But oh my god, this series is just so fun, so addictive, really funny. It definitely is not taking itself seriously, but it's also really interesting. Like, the world building is actually solid, and this is just a really fun time. And there's also drama, because of course there is, when we're dealing with wolf shifters and the wolf packs and the politics surrounding that. So yeah, definitely recommend this series for sure. I definitely want to jump into the next novella really soon. Next up, we have to talk about one of the most unique romances I have read in a while. Oh my god, this was so good. This is Tangled Wires by Lillian Lark. So first of all, I have to recommend this if you are someone that enjoys shows like Black Mirror and Twilight Zone, things like that, that explore science fiction ideas, but usually have a plot twist or something else kind of going on in the story. That is definitely the vibe of this, but it's a romance. And we have Charlotte and Matthew. Matthew is an android who was built by Charlotte's father, and to pass Matthew off as a human, Charlotte's father told the world that Matthew and Charlotte are siblings, basically. And so now her father has passed away years before. Charlotte and Matthew run this biomedical company together, and there has just always been this tension between the two of them. And at the beginning of this book, this is actually a novella. It was about, I think, just about 200 pages, and like, boy, does this pack a lot of story in 200 pages. But at the very beginning, Matthew just wants to become friends with Charlotte. We find out pretty soon into the book that he's been in love with her for years, but she doesn't know how to interact with him because he is an android. She doesn't really understand, like, how much can he really feel? You know, he's a machine at the end of the day. And so what ensues is a beautiful, very, very emotional romance. I do want to say, content warning for suicide. This book gets heavy for sure. And yeah, like, this was emotional, but also like incredibly hot and sexy. Oh my god, Matthew was giving Cinedom vibes. Like, there were moments where he is very, very sweet and loving to Charlotte, but he is also very demanding in the bedroom. And that was a fun time. Next up, I am so excited to talk about False Start by Candy Steiner, because even though I know that Candy Steiner is a very popular author, she's an indie romance author, I feel like I haven't heard anybody talk about this book, which is interesting because this is a part of her Red Zone Rival series, which is a very popular series by her. And so this is the 5th, and I think it might be the final book of the series, but now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like in the epilogue, it was brought up that there might be a 6th book. But anyways, yeah, I haven't heard anyone talk about this book, and this is one of my top favorite Candy Steiner books now. Like, y'all need to read it. So what first drew me into reading this is that the audiobook is a duet narration, not just a dual narration, but a duet narration. So that means that the male narrator reads all of the dialogue for all of the male characters, and the female narrator reads all of the dialogue for all the female characters. And I love when audiobook producers go that extra mile. It just adds so much to the listening experience. But also, I saw that this featured Kyle as the hero, and he's not necessarily been a villain throughout the series, but he has like started drama in other books, basically. And so I was just very interested to see his romance, and this has fake dating. And I will say I'm getting a little tired of fake dating, but that still drew me into this, and I did really enjoy the fake dating in this. But anyways, this is a very angsty and emotional romance, my goodness. So Kyle and Madeline knew each other back in high school. They're only a couple years apart. I want to say Maddie might be like 2 years older than him, if I'm not mistaken. But because his parents were like helicopter parents, basically, when Kyle is like 15 or 16 years old, they have Maddie be his babysitter. And so they end up falling for each other through that kind of relationship. But something goes very, very wrong. Basically, there is miscommunication that is neither Maddie nor Kyle's fault, but it causes them to break up, and they end up going their separate ways. And now it's at least 10 years later at this point. Maddie moved on, she married someone else, she has a son named Sebastian who's about 6 at this point, and Kyle moved on with college and his NFL career, and so now they're back in each other's lives, and this involves fake dating because Maddie's now ex-husband was abusive towards her, so I do want to, you know, throw that out there, content warning for domestic violence. I can't remember any happening on page, but it is like talked about throughout the book. And so Kyle steps in to be her fake boyfriend, really to protect her from her ex-husband, who is an asshole and is kind of dangling custody of their son over Maddie's head, like that he's gonna pursue full custody basically. And so this just ends up being such a beautiful and angsty second chance romance. What Candy Steiner does so well, and it's featured in this book, is she really does an amazing job of balancing the emotional and angsty elements with great sex scenes. I'll just throw that out there. Like, there is some great tension and chemistry between these two characters, and when they finally give into those feelings, it's everything. And not every author can strike that balance, you know? Usually one takes spotlight over the other, but she just does such a good job of balancing those elements. And also the relationship that Kyle forms with Maddie's son, Sebastian, was like the cutest thing ever. Oh my God, he was like the most adorable little boy. And I love reading single parent romances where the love interest forms like the most amazing relationship with the other character's child. Like, it's just everything, and it makes me so happy. Next up, I want to talk about the Happy Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez. So I went into this book actually with pretty low expectations, even though I have read 3 books by Abby Jimenez, and I gave all of those 5 stars, and I think all of those books ended up being like one of my favorite books that I read in that particular year. But I read the predecessor to this book called The Friend Zone. So she basically has 2 romance series. She has this one, and then she has the other 3 books that I just mentioned. The first book in that series is called Part of Your World. Love, love, love that series. I tried reading The Friend Zone and I just was not invested. I was bored. And so I DNF'd that book. I put it down at like, I want to say the 20-30% mark. Like, I was not very far into it. However, oh my God, this was so good. This is the Abby Jimenez that I love. We have our main character, Sloane. A couple years before this book starts, her fiance passed away from a motorcycle accident, and now she's just trying to move on with her life. She's just trying to live her life. And so I think this book starts on like the 2nd anniversary of his passing. And so I think she's driving to the cemetery, but then this dog comes out of nowhere and like is in the middle of the street, and she has to stop really short, and the dog just kind of like jumps into her car. And so she tries to contact the owner, who ends up being our hero Jason, but she can't get through to him for a little while because he's a musician and he's been on tour, I believe in like Australia. And so their relationship does not start off on the best foot, because by the time she gets in touch with him, like, she's pissed at him for, you know, neglecting this dog, and she wants to claim the dog as her own. And so what ensues is the 2 of them getting to know each other via phone calls. And so once he comes back from tour, they start going on dates, and things go on from there. One of the things I really loved about this book, and I know that a lot of books feature this, but at the beginning of every chapter, she puts a specific song that kind of goes with each chapter. And so that just really added a lot to my reading experience, because I could pause the audiobook, listen to the song, and then jump back into the book. And it was just a really enjoyable experience. I also just really enjoyed this romance because of like the type of angst that we're dealing with. It's not necessarily angst between the hero and heroine. It's really like outside forces kind of affecting their relationship. Given that Jason is a musician, he is becoming more and more famous, and so he is being put on like longer and longer tours. And how can a relationship work when someone is out of town all the time and the other person can't just like pick up and leave and go with them on tour, right? So I love the exploration of that. Yeah, this was just really great. definitely emotional as usual with Abby Jimenez. I don't know that it's like my top favorite Abby Jimenez book, but I did really enjoy it for what it is. And I am looking forward to reading the third and final book in this series for sure. So, oh, I have 3 more books left to talk about. I have My Vampire Plus One by Jenna Levine. Y'all, I love this series and I love Jenna Levine because she, to me, is like a breath of fresh air in the paranormal romance subgenre. I feel like there aren't that many like true rom-coms in the genre, and I feel like she just does such a good job of writing those books. Like, I literally laugh out loud reading her books. Like, when I was listening to this audiobook, I'd be like driving to and from work listening to this and just like laughing my butt off because of how funny Reggie, our hero, is. We meet him in the first book and he was like a menace to society. By the way, book 1 is My Roommate is a Vampire. I loved that book as well. I do think I might have loved that book a little bit more than this one, but clearly I loved both of them. I gave them both 5 stars. But so we have Reggie. He is a vampire, and like I said, a menace to society. He is chaos pretty much, but he's also like super funny and sweet and flirty and just like a fun guy. And so he meets Amelia, our heroine. She is a CPA, so like the opposite of Reggie in every way, and he is immediately attracted to her. They like bump into each other. It's like a chance meeting. But meanwhile, Amelia needs a date for a family wedding that's coming up. She's tired of going to these events by herself, and so she helps Reggie out one time and he tells her, hey, I owe you one. And so she asks him to be her fake date. Things go on from there. This was just so fun, so sweet. Like, Reggie also kind of gives Cinedom vibes. Like, he's very sweet and funny to Amelia, but in the bedroom, things change and he definitely goes a little feral, mainly because he's a vampire. But yeah, this is just so fun and it just made me smile, made me happy. I am so excited to say that she is continuing on with this series. I thought that this was going to be the end of the series and I got really sad. However, she recently posted on her Instagram that there is a book 3 coming, and I think we're getting a cover reveal really soon, and I can't wait to see what the cover looks like because I am obsessed with this like pop art inspired cover that we have going on. Both books 1 and 2 like have this same style, and it's so adorable. Then we have a very recent reread of mine is City of Heavenly Fire by Cassandra Clare. I don't usually bring up rereads too much in these kinds of videos, but I wanted to bring this up anyway because I have been doing a very slow reread of the entire Shadowhunter Chronicles universe, so I can jump into the Last Hours trilogy, which is the most recent trilogy that has been released in this world. I definitely needed a refresh of this world and what happens in each series and all that stuff. So this is the 6th and final book in the Mortal Instrument series, which is not my favorite series in this universe. However, in my opinion, Cassandra Clare like knows how to write a finale. And this is a fantastic finale. I just love the direction this plot goes in. I just love the world that this whole universe takes place in. I love all the different kinds of paranormal creatures we have, because not only do we have shadow hunters, which are demon hunters, we also have warlocks, we have fairies, we have vampires and werewolves, and I'm probably forgetting some things, and I just feel like all those elements come together so well. So yeah, definitely looking forward to my next reread in this world. Last but not least, we have a very interesting book to talk about. I have a lot of thoughts about this book. This is Long Live Evil by Sarah Rees Brennan. What is so interesting about this book, before I get into all the things that I did truly enjoy about this book, what's interesting is that my reading experience was not a 5-star reading experience, yet I ended up giving this book 5 stars. Because there were definitely times where maybe the pacing was a bit slow. Some of the scenes centered on characters that I don't absolutely love. Like, there are some characters in this book that I adore, and then there's other characters that I'm kind of indifferent towards at the moment. So this wasn't like a perfect reading experience for me. Like, all throughout, like, the whole first 95% of this book, I was like, okay, this is a solid 4-star book. I'm looking forward to the next book in the series, but like, it's not the most amazing thing I ever read. However, The ending knocked me on my ass, and I cannot stop thinking about this entire book now since I've read it. I read it at the very beginning of October, and I cannot stop thinking about it a month later because of how fucking amazing that ending was. Let's get into the plot, because there's some good stuff happening in here. So we have our main character, Ray. She lives in the real world. She lives in our world. She is suffering from late stage cancer. She is dying. She knows that she will be dead probably within the next couple of months. And what's really interesting about that whole part of the story is that Sarah Rees Brennan herself went through late stage cancer. She survived late stage cancer, and I just feel like that adds a whole nother level to this story, because there are passages in this book where Ray is talking about how just awful chemo treatments are and how you just feel cold all the time. Like, you feel like your blood is ice. And I feel like that aspect of the story really came off the page because of the author's own experience, and I just can't imagine going through something like that. Ray is suffering. She has a younger sister, and over the years they have bonded over this fantasy series called the Time of Iron series. And Ray's favorite character in this series is the Emperor. He's kind of, I guess, an anti-hero is what you would call him. I don't think you'd call him a villain, but he's just a very like interesting and complex character and does some twisted things throughout the Time of Iron series that they've been reading. So then this mysterious woman shows up and tells Ray that basically if she goes into the world of the Time of Iron series, she can save her life in the human world. So she takes that deal, she goes into this world, and so now she becomes Lady Rahela, pictured here, who is the villainess of the series. And when she steps into the world, it's like the night before her character is supposed to get executed. So she needs to save her life so that she can basically go on this quest. And so she basically forms her group of evil minions, and things go on from there. This first book has so much going on. Like, there's definitely a lot happening, and it's interesting to see how basically Ray's presence in this world changes the events of the book series that she knows. Because we see that like events happen, and in her mind she's like, oh wait, that wasn't supposed to happen until this book, or oh shit, that wasn't supposed to happen at all. Like, so that's really interesting. The characters in this are just really cool, really complex. There's a bit of romance in this that I was like freaking the fuck out about because it was just so good and I wanted more, and I definitely think we'll be getting more romance in future books. And like, yeah, just such an interesting, unique story. I love reading stories like this where a character ends up going into a fantasy world and like the repercussions of that. And yeah, so while my reading experience, you know, was more of a 4-star reading experience, like I just cannot stop thinking about that ending, and like I am dying for book 2, and I don't think we're getting book 2 for at least another year, and I am dying. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. I would love it if you would leave a comment down below if you want to discuss any of the books that I brought up in this series. If you want to give me or anybody watching this video recommendations, that would be amazing. I would also love it if you would leave a like and subscribe, and I thank you so much in advance if you do. And with all of that being said, I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!